Hello YouTube. I have a number of videos about ancient India, its beliefs, incredible knowledge. And today I want to continue, I want to tell you about the knowledge of the Vedas. And most of my information comes from the Russian research sources, because people in former Soviet Union, Russian Empire, have been very much interested in the Indian civilization and have accumulated quite a lot of knowledge, which basically is not that well known in the West. So let me start with stating that modern scientists who intersect with the Vedic treatises and who try to verify the ancient knowledge contained in these texts with modern scientific methods are convinced of their correctness. But you see, modern science is in no hurry to recognize them. What are the Vedas? In principle, this word for a Russian person doesn't even need to be translated from the Sanskrit language, because Veda is just like the Russian word vedать, the older term for verb for to know. So, to us, the Vedas are literally books of knowledge. The Vedas are a large body of religious texts originating in ancient India, composed in Vedic Sanskrit. The texts constitute the oldest layer of Sanskrit literature and the oldest scriptures of Hinduism. The Vedas are devoted to various areas of knowledge, medicine and health, architecture, politics, psychology, family relationships, astrology, theology, religion and spirituality. They cover all spheres of human life and also tell about the structure of the universe, and even spheres that are not material, the subtle worlds, energy fields, planets of the higher and lower worlds. Increasingly, scientists are surprised to discover this interesting phenomenon. What they're trying to invent empirically, conducting experiments and drawing conclusions, has long been described in the Vedas. In ancient times, there was a worldwide civilization that was guided by the Vedas, and it was called Vedic civilization. The Vedas are multi-level knowledge which can be divided into material and spiritual. For example, Vedic medicine, Ayurveda, is known, which explains that people's bodies are structured differently, and the approach to treating each of them is individual according to their body type. Another example, Vedic architecture, Vastu, the laws of designing space and the art of correctly positioning yourself in space, finding peace, but not for the sake of peace, but for the sake of realizing God in this space. So it's somewhat similar to Feng Shui, but also a little bit different. There are also Vedic psychology, sociology, political science, and other branches of applied knowledge. The meaning of the material knowledge of the Vedas is to make a person's life in this world more harmonious. The texts of the Vedas talk about the principles of karma, the laws of fate, and reincarnation. The reincarnation of the soul on this planet and in other dimensions of the universe, about the absolute and our connection with it. The main mantra of Rig Veda compares God to the sun and the soul to a ray. The ray glides across the earth, but its homeland is the sun, the spiritual world. The well-known Sanskrit word yoga can be translated as connection with the source. The Vedas are genuine education. We spend a third of our lives studying in schools and universities, but having received many diplomas, we still did not receive the answer to the most important questions. Who am I? What is the sense of life? However, the Vedas begin by answering precisely these main questions. Hitopadesha states, The ability to ask questions about the meaning of life is what distinguishes man from animals. And the Vedanta Sutra proclaims, the time has come to inquire about the truth. For many centuries, the Vedas were transmitted orally in poetic form and much later were written down in Sanskrit. The Hindu tradition considers the Vedas apaurusheya, eternal, revealed scriptures not created by man, which were given to humanity through the meditation of holy sages. There are 4 Vedas: Rig Veda, the Veda of hymns; Yajur Veda, Veda of sacrificial formulas; Sama Veda, Veda of chant; and Atharva Veda, Veda of spells. The main part of the Vedas are the Samhitas, collections of mantras, which are adjacent to which the adjacent are the Brahmanas, Aranyakas, and Upanishads, texts that are commentaries on the Vedic Samhitas. The Vedas say that absolute knowledge is limitless, and all human knowledge in comparison with it is a mere handful of dirt. It is generally accepted that Bhagavad Gita, which is an excerpt from the epic Mahabharata, quite often described in my videos too about unusual phenomena we see on our sky, in our land, in our seas. Anyway, it sets the main essence of Vedic knowledge. The Vedas explain things that are both within our senses and beyond our senses. Therefore, sometimes there's an exclamation, this cannot be. However, those modern scientists who intersect with the Vedic statements and who try to verify them with modern scientific methods only become convinced of their correctness. All modern science is based on feelings or on an experimental system. If there is an experiment, it confirms, then it is so, and if the experiment does not confirm, then it is not so. That science is at the level of passion, and it's called pratyaksha, direct perception through the senses and mind. And ignorance is science at the level of hypothesis. Either this is true or not, but we think so. We calculated something there and came to this conclusion. 3 years pass on and we say the exact opposite, and so on. This is called anumana, logical conclusion based on generalized experience. It would be wrong to think that in ancient times people were not looking for answers to the same questions as we are, that they were not interested in the secrets of the universe. Throughout human history, there have been guardians of knowledge, spiritual teachers and sages. They also conducted research and applied logic, but unlike modern scientists, they followed one or another spiritual practice. Thanks to this, they had a greater opportunity to acquire knowledge in the forms of revelations, Shabda. Let's consider excerpts from scientific works that exist now, at the moment, the discoveries of modern science, and the first mention of this in Vedic literature. Plastic surgery. Officially in the modern world, German doctors established this as a science in 1968. So we came to learn, so to say, of the branch of medicine as a science, plastic surgery. Shushruta, a Vedic work that is more than 4,000 years old, according to modern scientists, is completely, it's covering it has a section on plastic surgery where this knowledge is covered. If you compare the volume of modern science with that volume with even the description of objects, all surgical supplies, you will be simply shocked. You will understand that modern science in this area does not even cover 1/1000th of all knowledge described in this work. Fantastic discoveries in medicine based on Ayurveda, 300 types of plastic surgeries, and 125 types of surgical instruments are described. Prosthetics. We're not talking about the kind of prosthetics that we have seen somewhere in films and so forth. Instead of a leg, there is some kind of prosthetics, and the person walks. This refers to prostheses that maximally perform the functions of lost limbs and organs. In the 20th century, such a system began to be developed when it performed some percentage of the system for lost organs or limbs. Well, there are sections in the Rig Veda that explain basically how to make prosthetics that can perform almost 90% of the functions of a lost organ or a limb. And what's most amazing is that there are drawings and descriptions of how to create prosthetics, and it's hard to even believe, which gives such an effect that a person simply doesn't feel it, but performs all other functions. That is, he does not feel with this prosthesis. All other functions are performed completely. There is even a description of how you can make an eye that can see instead of a lost eye. And it is not easy to see light or darkness. It can distinguish shapes and colors. You can even read with this eye, and it can be completely artificial. So modern scientists have not yet achieved prosthetics, which is described in the Rig Veda. Let's talk about chromosomes. The discovery was made in 1890. Mahabharata gives a huge section where it completely describes the number of chromosomes in detail, explains it very simply, clearly, and accurately. Connection of male and female chromosomes in a zygote. In the 20th century, it was discovered and just beginning to be explored. There is some movement in the research. The Mahabharata and Bhagavata Purana fully explain all these processes. Baby's heartbeat that can be heard in the second month of pregnancy. I believe this was discovered by Robinson in 1972. This is described in much more detail in such a Vedic work as Aitreya Upanishad and also in Bhagavata Purana in the third canto. A detailed, scrupulous description and knowledge about this is given. Artificial insemination. The more modern procedure is the result of work of British biologist Robert Edwards and his colleague, gynecologist Robert Steptoe. In 1967, Edwards was the first to successfully fertilize a human egg in the laboratory. Well, Steptoe developed a technique using the laparoscopic method. It was the work of these two scientists that formed the basis of the modern method. After hundreds of unsuccessful attempts and experiments, in the end, in 1978, the world's first test tube baby was born. The Mahabharata fully describes the different types of artificial insemination, not only those that you read about in newspapers or in scientific literature. How can you get children artificially? inseminate artificially. Parthenogenesis. Artificial parthenogenesis in animals was first obtained by a Russian zoologist Alexander Tikhomirov. Back in 1886, he showed that unfertilized silkworm eggs can be stimulated to develop by solutions of strong acid, friction, and other physicochemical stimuli. Subsequently, artificial parthenogenesis was obtained by Jacques Loeb and other scientists in many animals, mainly in marine invertebrates, sea urchins and stars, worms, mollusks, and as well as in some amphibians, frog, and even mammals, rabbit. Well, apparently it's described in the Mahabharata. Now, about increased life expectancy during space travel. The Bhagavata Purana fully describes all scales and speeds of movements, all kinds of time and how time works. We still have not confirmed this yet. Whose theory is this? Einstein? Please note how it is called the theory of relativity. That is, in modern science, everything is theory. Okay? Cell divisions into 3 layers in the 20th century. That's the attributed date. But Bhagavata Purana describes and explains it completely. Microorganisms all are listed in Mahabharata. In modern science, apparently they were discovered in the 18th century. Life in plants, the entire Vedic tradition is related to this. In the modern world, Booth discovered this in the 19th century. Studying the nature of sleep it's not clear yet, and you can see some of my videos about the mysteries of sleep. Well, Prashna Upanishad Yoga Sutra by Patanjali have sections where a complete interpretation of the entire nature of dreams is given, how to interpret them, how you can understand what kind of dreams, what happens to the body during the sleep, analysis of the ear structure. Apparently it was done by McNally in 1925. The Rig Veda and Aitreya Upanishad describe this completely and in detail. Speed of light. Rig Veda chapter is called Samfashya. Scientists started to talk about it only in the 19th century. Now, about the planets behind Saturn. Our knowledge comes from 17th through 19th century. The Mahabharata fully explains what kind of planets there are and how they work. Space travel, you gotta look through all Vedic works. As you know, where modern science is right now with space travel. Gravity force. Prashna Upanishad tells the types of gravitational fields, how they change, with what help. It gives such a volume of understanding that people cannot even imagine, so to speak. Ultraviolet and infrared spectra in the Mundaka Upanishad. But in the modern science, they were discovered only in the 20th century. Tachyons that travel faster than light. The sensational tachyons, which were supposed to move faster than light. Scientists, they talk about it a lot. A tachyon or tachyonic particle is a hypothetical particle that always travels faster than light. Physicists believe that faster than light particles cannot exist because they are inconsistent with the known laws of physics. If such particles did exist, they could be used to send signals faster than light. But Mundaka Upanishad describes them. Nuclear weapons, well, we already know ours, modern ones, appeared in the 20th century. Apparently, the Vedas describe 96 types of nuclear weapons, Brahmastra, and this is only nuclear, but there are different things there too. This is the Hanur Veda, the Veda of military art. The Mahabharata and Bhagavata Purana explain and not only describe these nuclear weapons, but there are even works that teach you how to do this with the help of certain sounds and vibrations. Black holes. Well, 20th century, 21st century, we still don't really know what the black holes are. But apparently black holes are described in the Mundaka Upanishad, and their nature is fully revealed. And again, I'm referring to Russian scientists who have studied the Vedas. Subatomic particles. Who were this attributed to in the 20th century? Chadwick, Thomas. The Bhagavata Purana describes Paramana, a subatomic particle that scientists have not yet discovered. Aircraft. Well, you can see a number of my videos on the Vimanas. Let's see what else in general those researchers say, that you can find them in Rig Veda, Ramayana, Mahabharata. There is a Vedic text called Vimanika Shastra, and I described it in other videos, which explains the principle of construction of aircraft. It is written in technical Sanskrit. Well, because the difficulty with translation generally, I mean, if you, for example, if you have an English language dictionary for foreigners and tourists, if you take this English language dictionary, you will never translate with it, for example, a complicated technical texts, because for this special dictionaries are used which contain description of technical terms. Because some kind of substrata will have one meaning in publishing, but in microelectronics it will have a completely different meaning. Similarly, Vimanika Shastra, it became known at the beginning of the 20th century and did not arouse much interest at all because people had no associations. But as soon as descriptions of UFOs began to appear, it immediately turned out that many of these descriptions coincided with the descriptions of the Vimanika Shastra. Vimanika says that if you, the pilot, make such and such a combination, the Vimana will be covered with a shining protective body. And if you do this other combination, for example, an image of what is visible on the ground will appear, etc. You can relate to modern technology. I don't have to tell you what they're referring to. And one of the scientists from Hyderabad, he took the ancient Vedic text, Ayurveda, the Vedic medicine. And by the way, the part of Ayurveda, there are chemical formulas. And when he applied these chemical formulas for the Vimanika Shastra, he was able to synthesize aircraft glass, aircraft plastic, a certain alloy that looked like lead, but it absorbed laser radiation. And when he read the place in the Vimanika Shastra where this alloy should be used, it is described that it should absorb sunlight. Well, very interesting, right? But also, submarines are described in Vedic literature. Also, using sound to destroy material objects and create material objects. Gavreau put forward, so to speak, a hypothesis in 1964, and some of his experiments were successful. Mahabharata describes such a type of weapon as Vajra Astra. That is a certain creation of sound vibration which can destroy any material object of any scale, any volume, any material object, metal, whatever, with certain sound vibrations. That is, Bra means gather, and sometimes seashells participate. Some blow into shells. other pronounced sound vibrations with a certain timbre of voice in a certain mental state, and produce a certain type of weapon, vibration weapon. And the water cycle in nature. Apparently, you can also create structure through sound. Very interesting. Water cycle in nature, I believe it's described in Rig Veda. Decimal system, trigonometry, algebra, zero, the presence of precise names for numbers up to the 53rd power, geometry, the law of gravity, quantum physics, time measurements, photography, astronomy, television. All this is described in Vedic literature. In addition to exhaustive material, Vedic words present amazing spiritual and subtle knowledge, the personal God, all-pervading Brahman, soul of the law of karma, the circle of reincarnation, the wheel of samsara. These writings also describe esoteric paths for the development of extraordinary mystical powers and the spiritual elevation of man. That's what I wanted to let you know today. And I'll continue from time to time to bring you videos about fantastic discoveries and just incomparable history of ancient India. If you like my research, please kindly support me to the links you will find in the description to this video. Please subscribe to my channel, and thank you for your attention to my work.